And today's movie opens with a yellow car arriving at the Overlook Hotel. Jack Torrance introduces himself to the front desk and requests a meeting with the manager, Mr. Allman. In their meeting, Jack is interviewed for a caretaker position responsible for maintaining the hotel during its closure, which is happening because of the bad weather. Mr. Allman and Mr. Bill Watson explain Jack's duties while Jack, aspiring to be a writer, sees the hotel's seclusion as an opportunity to focus on his work. Mr. Allman warns Jack about a past caretaker, Charles, who experienced a mental breakdown and killed himself and other people. The scene transitions to a suburban apartment, home to Jack's wife Wendy and their son Danny. Over breakfast, Danny expresses his reservations about moving to the hotel for winter, but Wendy assures him that it's going to be an adventure. Wendy then inquires about Danny's imaginary friend Tony's opinion on the move. Danny, speaking in a voice attributed to Tony, reveals reluctance to move to the hotel without specifying the reason. Soon after, Danny experiences a horrifying vision of blood gushing from an elevator and a brief glimpse of two eerie twin girls, causing him to black out. And next, the family travels to the Overlook Hotel on its closing day. Once at the hotel, the manager, Altman, greets them and begins giving them the tour. Wendy expresses her admiration for the hotel, and meanwhile, Danny is alone in the game room and he encounters two ghostly girls, identical to the ones that he'd seen in the previous vision. Meanwhile, Altman takes Jack and Wendy through the hotel's exterior, where they witness the famous hedge maze. Altman divulged some of the hotel's history. It was built in 1909 on a Native American burial ground, and he also points out the hotel's snowcat, an essential vehicle for winter conditions. They then meet the hotel's head chef, Dick, and Dick gives Danny and Wendy a tour of the expansive kitchen. When Dick addresses Danny by the nickname Doc, it surprises Wendy and she asks about it, and Dick subtly avoids her question. As Wendy is shown the storage room, Dick telepathically communicates with Danny, offering him ice cream. Dick later explains to Danny that they are alone in this ability to communicate telepathically, and this is due to a special gift that they both share called the Shining. Danny shares with Dick about his imaginary friend Tony, who shows him visions of the past and future while he sleeps. And when Dick asks if Danny has seen anything about the hotel, Danny instead asks if Dick is scared of the hotel. But Dick just reassures him, but he does advise Danny to avoid room 237. A month later, the family has settled in, and Wendy is taking care of Jack, who's trying to write. Jack confesses to Wendy his eerie sense of familiarity with the hotel, as if almost he'd been there before. A few days later, Wendy finds Jack typing in the main lounge. When she tries to engage him, Jack responds with coldness and irritation, and he forbids her from disturbing him while he's working. Thursday flashes on the screen, and we find Wendy and Danny playing in the snow outside the Overlook Hotel. Inside, a sinister expression dominates Jack's face as he gazes out of the window at his wife and son. And on Saturday, Jack sits engrossed in his work at the lounge while Wendy tries to make a call. Realizing it's futile, she turns to the emergency radio, connecting with a local marshal who informs her that a storm has disrupted the phone lines and restoration will take some time, and he advises Wendy to keep the radio on at all times. Meanwhile, Danny is navigating the hotel corridors on his tricycle, and turning a corner, he's startled by the sight of the eerie twin girls. They invite him to come play with us forever and ever, and a brief chilling vision of the girls' mutilated bodies with an axe nearby flashes. It's really unnerving to see this movie, by the way, guys. I really recommend you guys check it out. Ugh. Danny covers his eyes, and when he removes his hands, the girls have vanished, and terrified, he confides in his imaginary friend Tony. Tony tries to calm him by echoing the advice of Mr. Dick, telling him that the ghastly visions are not real and that they're like pictures in a book. On Monday, in the room, Danny finds Jack awake, staring vacantly. He asks Danny to come to him, and Jack inquires gently about how Danny's doing, who replies saying that he's doing okay. Danny also asks whether Jack likes the hotel, to which Jack passionately expresses his love for it, wishing that they could stay there forever and ever. Wait, hold on. Did you subscribe to our channel? Come on guys, you're here, you're watching the video. Help us out by hitting the subscribe button, as it really helps out me and my team to make more videos for you guys. And now, let's get back to the recap. Wednesday arrives and Danny is playing in a hotel hallway where an unexpected ball rolls toward him. He follows its path and discovers room 237, and the room was apparently open with a key in the lock. He ventures inside, and meanwhile, Wendy was in the basement inspecting the hotel's electrical systems when she hears screams from the lounge. Rushing to the scene, she finds Jack sleeping at his desk and screaming. When she wakes him up, he's startled and falls looking terrified, and he admits to having a horrific nightmare where he brutally murdered Wendy and Danny and cut them up into pieces. As Danny helps him into his chair, Danny walks in, revealing bruises on his neck and a torn sweater. Unable to get an explanation from the visibly traumatized Danny, Wendy immediately assumes Jack's involvement and quickly takes Danny away. Jack wanders around the hotel, appearing disturbed and making unusual gestures. And he enters the hotel's golden ballroom and approaches the bar, which is devoid of any people or any alcohol. He definitely mutters his desperation for beer, even at a cost of his soul, and to his surprise, he finds the bar now stocked and manned by Lloyd, the bartender. He strikes up a conversation with Lloyd, insisting on his innocence regarding Danny's injuries and confessing to an accident 3 years ago when he dislocated Danny's shoulder. And just then, Wendy bursts into the desolate ballroom, out of breath, and she informs Jack about a crazy woman in one of the hotel rooms who attacked Danny. Jack is skeptical of her claim but begrudgingly asks which room it is. In the following scene, we find Dick reclining in bed watching TV, and unexpectedly he begins to respond as if seeing something terrifying. Flashing images of room 237 and Danny convulsing invade his mind. Meanwhile, at the Overlook Hotel, Jack is in room 237, surveying the surroundings. He discovers a naked woman emerging from the bathroom, and as she drifts toward him, he reciprocates, resulting in a passionate embrace. The moment turns horrific when, upon looking in the mirror, Jack realizes the woman is in fact a decaying corpse. Horrified, he retreats, and the grotesque figure, now appearing as an elderly decaying woman, tries to reach to him with an evil, malicious laughter. He then runs out of the room and locks the door. Back in his apartment, Dick struggles with an unsuccessful phone call. Meanwhile, Wendy, concerned about Danny, confronts Jack upon his return to their living quarters, and Jack denies finding anything unusual about the room, which confuses Wendy. As the conversation continues, Danny is lying in bed and his face looks terrified. He has a feeling that something bad is going to happen, and he sees a door with the word Red Rum on his mind. He also foresees the flood of blood gushing from an elevator that he previously visualized before collapsing back at home. When Wendy suggests that they leave the hotel for Danny's sake, Jack reacts aggressively, accusing her of sabotaging his opportunity to achieve something. He storms out, but Jack's rage dissipates immediately when he hears music, and this leads him to discover the festive decorations scattered around a corner. Meanwhile, Dick contacts a local sheriff about his inability to reach the family at the hotel and requests the sheriff try and reach them via radio, to which the sheriff agrees. At the hotel, Jack enters a busy ballroom where people are all dressed up in clothes from the 1920s. He goes to the bar and asks Lloyd, the bartender, for a glass of bourbon, and everybody here that we're seeing are actually ghosts and not real people. Jack tries to pay for his drink, but Lloyd informs him that payment is not necessary. As he sips his drink and wanders around the room, he encounters a waiter named Delbert who accidentally spills a drink on his jacket. In the men's room, as this waiter was helping him clean up, Jack recognizes this guy from the story that Allman told him, and this was the caretaker that killed himself and all those people. Jack questions him about his past and insists that he was the caretaker for this hotel before him, but the waiter denies any recollections of such events, insisting that Jack is the actual caretaker and that he always has been. And the waiter does something weird here where he suggests that Danny, Jack's son, is attempting to bring an outsider to the hotel. And he criticizes Danny for using his unique abilities against Jack's wishes and implies that Danny and Wendy may require correction, similar to how he claims to have corrected his own family, and by correction he means hacking them up into pieces with an axe. And Jack nods, indicating that he agrees with what the waiter was saying. Jack approaches the hotel room and sabotages the radio to cut off their communication. From this we can infer that Jack was receptive to Delbert's advice about correcting his family. Dick calls the sheriff from Florida, asking if he's been able to reach the family, and the sheriff informs him that he hasn't been able to contact them yet. And feeling very concerned, Dick decides to return to the hotel. Finding Jack absent, Wendy investigates his typewriter, only to discover an unsettling repetition of "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy," written countless times in varying formats over thousands of pages. And from this, it becomes clear to her that Jack has completely lost his mind. Out of nowhere, Jack emerges from the shadows, causing Wendy to feel uneasy. He confronts her about intruding and slowly moves closer to her in a very menacing way. Meanwhile, Danny, back in their room, psychically hears his parents' conversation and experiences horrifying visions of a blood-soaked hallway and the word Red Rum on a door. Jack continues to advance on Wendy, who retreats terrified and crying and brandishing the bat. Despite her pleas for their son's welfare, Jack insists on fulfilling his contract with the hotel. The confrontation escalates on a staircase, and Wendy pleads with Jack not to hurt her, and Jack replies that he won't hurt her but will only bash her head in. As Jack advances, he is hit in the head by Wendy's defensive swing of the bat, sending him hurtling down the flight of stairs. Wendy manages to drag an unconscious Jack into the basement and lock him inside the storage room, and Jack wakes up furiously banging on the door while Wendy arms herself with a kitchen knife. Despite Jack's pleas, promises, and threats, Wendy vows to escape with Danny using the snowcat. However, Jack ominously hints at a surprise regarding the snowcat on the radio, and Wendy discovers to her dismay that Jack has sabotaged the snowcat, rendering it useless. Later, Jack, confined in the storage room, hears a knock on the door, and it was the ghost of Delbert. And Delbert insinuates that Jack isn't fulfilling his violent obligations toward his family. However, Jack assures him that he will handle it with great pleasure. And upon Jack's commitment, Delbert unlocks the door. In the next scene, Dick drives the snowcat to the Overlook Hotel, and inside the hotel, Danny, with Tony's voice, utters red rum again and again. He approaches his sleeping mother, Wendy, and retrieves a large knife from beside her table. Using his mother's lipstick, he writes the word red rum on their bedroom door. The chanting and commotion wake Wendy, who hugs Danny scared and sees the reflection of red rum in the mirror, and because it was actually written on the mirror, the inverted version reads murder. Suddenly, Jack begins hacking at the main door from the outside with an axe. Wendy and Danny flee to the bathroom, locking themselves in, and Wendy, desperate, manages to open a small window and assists Danny in escaping through it, but can't escape herself. Jack, now inside, finds the bathroom door locked, and Wendy, terrified, waits by the door with the kitchen knife in hand. As Jack manages to axe a hole in the door and reaches through to unlock it, Wendy slashes his hand with her knife. The sound of an approaching snowcat diverts Jack's attention, allowing Wendy a brief break. Meanwhile, Danny hides in a kitchen cabinet, and outside, Dick exits the snowcat and heads into the hotel, calling out. Jack, who was hiding behind a pillar, hits him in the chest with an axe, and Danny, connected to Dick through their shared telepathic abilities, screams upon witnessing Dick's demise, drawing Jack's attention. Panicked, Danny leaves his hiding place and runs, with a limping Jack, who was injured from his fall earlier, following close behind. The chase leads Jack and Danny out into the snow and into the hedge maze, and in the hedge maze, Danny cleverly retraces his steps, erasing his tracks and concealing himself behind a hedge. While Jack loses his trail inside the maze, Danny exits and reunites with his mother, and they escape in the snowcat that Dick had driven to the hotel. From within the hedge maze, Jack hears them leaving, and exhausted and disoriented, he stumbles around the maze, ultimately collapsing from hypothermia and freezing to death. And the movie reaches its chilling conclusion through a haunting final scene, a photograph of the party held in 1921, prominently showcased with the hotel. The image captures a young Jack sporting a smile amidst the lively crowd, suggesting the possibility of Jack being a reincarnation of a previous figure that was affiliated with the hotel. And this is how today's movie wraps up, boys and girls. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and most of all, subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much, and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!